Job chapter 3. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. And Job said, Let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said, A man is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let the clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry enter it. Let those curse it who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan. Let the stars of its dawn be dark. Let it hope for light, but have none, nor see the eyelids of the morning, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth, come out from the womb and expire? Why did the knees receive me, or why the breasts that I should nurse? For then I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept, then I would have been at rest, with kings and counsellors of the earth, who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not as a hidden stillborn child, as infants who never see the light? There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners are at ease together. They hear not the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter in soul, who long for death, but it comes not, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For my sighing comes instead of my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. For the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. This is the darkest chapter in the whole book of Job. Job here isn't addressing anyone. His friends are within earshot, and of course God is always listening. But Job is just bewailing his condition. And what we need to remember is that Job is a righteous man. And this time of immense darkness is not because of his sin or not because he is backslidden. In fact, it seems that Job's suffering is precisely because he's righteous. And that's what we need to remember as Christians, that when we suffer, it is not always because of sin. Job does show faith in 121 and chapter 2 verse 10. And sometimes we can be inclined to over-focus on this. Look, Job suffered, yet he trusted, and so should we. But we also need to see his lament in chapter 3 and see that this is the pained anguish of a righteous man. At the start of Job and at the end, God commends him. In chapter 42 verse 7, God says that Job has spoken rightly of God. And so what we should not do as Christians is say, yes, there is bad stuff, but Jesus came, and so there's no need to be sad anymore, in a flippant, uncaring way. That is not how Jesus responded to tragedy and suffering, and so neither should we. There is hope, and there are glimmers of the gospel, even in this dark chapter, but we cannot over-focus on that at the expense of cheapening Job's pain. In this chapter, Job does not curse God as Satan said he would. Instead, he curses the day of his birth and conception. He wishes it never happened, for that day to be covered in a thick, weighty darkness. That word, thick darkness, is where the phrase shadow of death comes from. Like how a Dementor in Harry Potter sucks happiness out of people, Job wants this darkness to suck the light, the joy and the life out of the day of his birth, for it to be completely swallowed up and forgotten about. God said, let there be light. Job says, let there be darkness. God gives life. Job wishes for it to be taken back. All Job wants is to go down to Sheol and be at rest. Both the king and the slave are at ease and free from trouble in that place, or so he says. And while Job desires this rest, he knows really that Sheol does not offer it. He knows that in reality, Sheol is the place where the worms become our parents, and that there is no hope there. That's what he says in chapter 17, verse 12. And so in the midst of all of this, how can the gospel be found? Well, Job still recognizes God as God. Job asks, why is light given to him who is in misery? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? Job still recognizes God as God. In our pain and suffering sometimes we can be inclined to think that God is not there, that somehow suffering disproves the existence of God. And yet Job, as he struggles immensely, does not doubt the existence of God. And furthermore, Job's restlessness is a sign of hope. If someone has given up all hope, then why would they say a poem like this? Someone who is in true despair cannot find the motivation to do anything, because what is the point in doing anything? So here we see Job's restlessness. He wants there to be an answer to this, and he has hope enough to ask these questions. So from this very dark passage, here's a question. How can we, as Christians, recognize the extreme pain and anguish and suffering that Christians do go through, while at the same time recognizing that in Jesus there is hope, without either diminishing the suffering or denying that hope really is there?